Alright, welcome back everyone. So today we're going to be going over a tier list. I'm changing it up a little bit in that this tier list is going to be talking about base plus prelude. I'm including prelude because that's the format I'm most familiar with. And right now prelude got added to BGA in alpha, so it looks like prelude will be coming there as well. And it's also the most played format on Steam. So with all those factors, I think discussing prelude makes the most sense. So we're going to talk about tier lists for cards, for corporations, and for preludes. There will be some disagreements in these as some of these cards are very difficult to place accurately. It depends on your hand and the game state and all these other things. So what my goal is I'm going to say generally what I think are the strongest cards, and then you guys are free to argue as much as you want, but it's probably not going to change my mind that much. But hey, always good to sharpen like iron sharpens iron, right? So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the S-Class cards. These are the best cards in the game, cards without peer. And no surprise on most of them. Research Outpost, City, Science Tag, -1 to all cards. Just, in my opinion, it's the best card in the game. It does so much for you. It's so good in any strategy. Uh, and just for the record, I'm not going to talk about every card in detail, but I am going to talk about the ones that matter. I've tried to break them up into categories as well. EarthCat, same reason as Research Outpost, global discount is very strong. If you watch my previous video about quantified guides, you know that you just need to play 8 cards to make this break even. Early on in the game, you'll almost assuredly play more than 8 cards, so EarthCat is very, very strong. Giant Ice Asteroid, uh, just the most TR you can get in one turn outside of Terraforming Ganymede. 4 TR, killing 6 plants, moving the temp along, placing oceans, allowing you to get some conversions yourself and get some nice oceans down to help with that conversion. Card does everything you could possibly want it to do, and you always want to have control of this card because even if you're not trying to terraform, you don't want to let your opponent, who is the terraformer, have access to this card. Nitrogen Rich Asteroid, 3 TR, one of them being temperature. And if you have 3 plant tags, then you get 4 plant production, which is honestly insane. So yeah, the ability to get 4 plant production in addition to some TR makes this a very strong card, and why plant tags need to always be carefully monitored during the game and not to pass them too freely. Mars University, science tags have some very strong synergies, and this card makes all bonkers because now you're able to cycle through the hand all the bad cards that you have now have the chance to become good cards whenever you play a science tag. Oh, and it comes with a victory point. Oh, and it's just 8 cost. Like, what a ridiculous card. Uh, the scariest card in the game to pass, in my opinion, because this thing can just pop off like nothing else. Ecozone, insane point scoring card, and it's a tile to help you with Landlord, and it comes with an animal tag, which can be a little bit rare. And it can block off your opponent's ocean walking or get between their cities, and it combos well with viral enhancers and decomposers and advanced ecosystems. And you already want to be playing some plant tags and animal tags normally because they're good ways to score, and this card makes them score even better. Insane point scoring card. Same reason that Giant Ice Asteroid is good. Deimos Down is also good because 3 heat bumps allows you to snipe the ocean, lets you kill 8 plants, gets you some steel back to spend on other things. Just an extremely efficient terraforming card for pushing that temperature. Viral enhancers. A lot of people will probably be a little surprised at viral enhancers. Really? Viral enhancers is better than stuff like anti-grav or anti-grav? Yeah, it is. That science tag is valuable. The microbe tag is valuable for synergies and helping you play that advanced ecosystems. And don't underestimate the effect of getting 1 plant every time you play a plant or microbe tag. And when you play animal tags, you add a point to them, essentially, if it's like fish or birds. And just count up the resources you get from this card in a normal game that a strong player plays, and you'll see, wow, this card actually gets a ton of value for what seems like such a simple effect. But definitely don't sleep on this card. And for the same reason that plant tags are good, and why it makes Ecozone good and Nitrogen Rich Asteroid good, insects is also an insane payoff for plant tags. And so these three kind of combo to make plant tags just very good and very dangerous to pass. Because insects just can get you ridiculous amounts of plant prod. 5 plant prod, not unheard of. And for a 12 cost card, that's ridiculous. That's like 60 MC value right there. Speaking of insane value, if you looked at the quantified guide, kelp farming was one of those cards that kind of breaks the mold, and how good it is for what it gives you and how easy it is to give. And in the Prelude format, it's easier than ever to get those 6 oceans down. And for that reason, kelp farming can be an early play in some cases, and it's just crushing when that happens. Don't underestimate how scary that card can be. And then finally, Mass Converter. Again, it's so efficient, it just breaks the curve on what similar cards do, and because of how efficient it is, it deserves a spot up here. And that 6 energy can help you push the temperature, can play your physics complex, you can play other cards, gives you space discounts, just it does it all, and it's so cheap if you meet the requirement. So these are, in my opinion, the best cards in the game. And then we have AI Central, and it has its own tier, and that's because sometimes I think it should be an S, sometimes I think it should be an A, and I think it deserves more discussion than the rest of these cards do. So AI Central, in your opening hand, if you're trying to just rush it out and play it, actually has not a great win rate. I think you'll find a lot of the time that if you're trying to rush out AI Central, while yes, it has a very powerful effect, it's very expensive to play, and without the production, you're not going to be able to really use the cards that you draw unless they're all amazing cards. And if you can't use the cards you're drawing, the Prelude game is just going to move a little too fast, and you're going to be just unable to play the cards that you've drawn, and your opponent's going to crush you. Now, that's not to say AI Central is a bad card. It's a fantastic card, and it's one you should never pass. You should pass it like you would any of these other S power cards. It is so strong that passing it is a terrifying prospect, and you probably don't want to do it. But you also can't just rush it out and have it always be good. Sometimes you're not going to find the 3 science tags. That's a significant requirement sometimes to find 3 science tags. You won't have the production, or you'll draw terribly. I think everyone has had that game of AI Central where it's essentially 2 mega credit production because you just draw garbage the entire game and you're going, what is this? Why did I spend so much on this card to just draw duds the whole game? And so I'm not going to call it S tier because I don't think it is as good as these other cards up here every time on average, but I do think that it is so potentially game winning that it can't go in A tier either. Because make no mistake, once AI Central comes down, you are on a clock, so to speak. Your opponent is going to outdraw you, and eventually, unless you got super lucky, find more of that premium cards than you. And so you can't just pass it willy-nilly either. So I'm putting it in its own tier. I think it's bottom of S, top of A. I can't really decide, and you guys feel free to tell me if you would do differently, but I think it's too scary to pass, but not quite as good as everything else. So A tier, these are all above average cards, all good cards, high efficiency. Kind of group them into groups here. So we have our science tags here. Restricted area is a fantastic way to get a tile and draw cards. Olympus Conference helps you draw cards with science tags, but because it's one card draw for every 2 science tags instead of 1 cycle for every science tag like Mars U, it is weaker than Mars U. Again, card draw is fine. Dev Center's perfectly fine with that. 2 science tags, very scary. Make stuff like AI Central and Anti-Grav and Mass Converter much more playable. And so always be careful when passing a card like that. Again, just science card draw. above average value. Anti-grav. Anti-grav is obviously an incredibly strong card, one of the strongest in the game. If it wasn't for that 7 science tag requirement, I'd be happy to put it up in S tier, just like I did Earth Catapult. But in a Prelude game, it kind of moves really quick sometimes, and so 7 science tags can be quite a requirement, and you're not going to be able to play this card every game that you have it in your hand. So for that reason, I put it in A, just because it's not as consistent as some of these other cards, but it's still really good. Don't mistake this as a bad card. This is still a S tier type of priority when it comes to drafting. Just when it comes to its average performance, it's not going to be as good. Then we have our card draw events. All these are pretty good. I think Business Contacts is my least favorite of them, because you kind of need to hit cards you're looking for when you play these cards. You're spending the equivalent of 10 mega credits to basically get one draft of your own with Business Contacts, and so if it's a bad draft, then you just wasted 8 mega credits. You could sell the cards for 2. But that's devastating to just miss on 8 mega credits. That's like sabotaging yourself. Like, oof. But if you hit, it's incredible, and you find the Giantitis asteroid or the Mars U or the research outpost, and it was more than worth those 10 mega credits. So it's a good card, but just don't overestimate what it does. I generally prefer Invention Contest more when it comes to 2 cards. That 5 mega credit savings is significant. Protected Habs needs no real explanation. Protecting your plants is good. I do think the card is slightly overrated by newer opponents. It's good, but it's not, incredibly good like the S tier. But it's nice not to have to worry about asteroids. It allows you to hold your plants for when it's convenient for you, and it means you don't have to worry about predators and virus and the other cards out there. Arctic Algae, this is another one that, again, I think a lot of people sleep on. The ability to potentially get 2 times 9 plus 1, that's 19 plants for 12 mega credits. That's an insane value, right? We talked about in that guide I made that it's like 19 plants. It's almost 40 mega credits of value for 15. The problem is they're spaced out throughout the game, and in Prelude, it's more likely some oceans we played early, so you're not going to get the full value from it. And as a result, it suffers a little bit in the Prelude format, but still a great card, still easily A tier card. Decomposers is good just like the Ecozone is, in that it's scoring point from your biology, but at only 1 out of 3 instead of 1 out of 2 for the VP makes it not quite as potent, though it does count on microbe tags, which is a little bit of a bonus. And the microbe tag itself means it's a good dump for your imported nitrogen, and it helps you turn on your advanced ecosystems. So still a great card, but lacking the tile and the lower VP ratio makes it just a little bit weaker. Herbivores, some of you might be surprised to see this card as high as it is. Might be thinking, but it's not a 1 victory point animal, so why is it so high? It's because this card by itself can score you insane amounts of points just from placing your greeneries. The other animals usually come on too late, and it's just 1 per gen, and so the ability of them to really score a bunch of points on their own is minimal. You have to have other cards to add things to them. But Herbivores just by itself can score very well if you have the Plant Prod, and you should want to try and get Plant Prod because it's the best way of scoring in this format. You can see all the biology cards up here, and you can see the truth of that. So Herbivores is very strong, and Advanced Ecosystems combos with all the things that we talked about, Decomposers, Ecozone, Viral Enhancers, can make this a 5-point card. 5 points for 14, pretty good. Pretty good. Next, at Plant Prod, and bushes and algae are like your generic, really good Plant Prod cards. I want to talk a little bit about the trees, the farming, and the mangrove here. So these are all really strong plant cards, but the high temperature requirements does make them a little harder to turn on than the others. If you are going with a heat prod strategy, then these are fantastic cards that you're going to want to keep because they're your big payoff for pushing the heat. So now you get super efficient plant scoring on the ground to help push the game to an end. If you're not going a big heat strategy, I wouldn't keep them early. They might be good later on. Uh, just as opportunistic chance to buy and play them because they're still worth some decent VP. But to hold them the whole game long might be a bit much if it delays your other plays for that opportunity cost. But like Mangrove, look at that. That's 15 for 3 points if Oxygen isn't maxed. Like already, that is that 5 VP ratio that we're looking 5 MC for AVP, excuse me, ratio that we're looking for. So don't sleep on this card either. It's very good. And if you can get it while Heat's being pushed quickly too, like it can almost be game winning on its own. Discounts are good, rebates are good, and space events are good. So having a media group and optimal arrow breaking just allows you to get some insane rebates to go far longer than you normally would be able to on your turns from just playing event after event after event and getting a bunch of value. And speaking of events, you can see Investment Loan and Indentured Workers. Both of these are very strong economic cards that just immediately go a little bit further than you would normally be able to. And again, look at this value. Early on in the game, you are essentially paying 1 victory point to get 5 cash with a card like Indentured Workers because the 3 MC cost of buying. So it is good to trade 1 victory point for 5 cash early on in the game because the victory point's worth 2 cash early in the game, roughly. So getting a 3 mega credit bonus there, that's good. That's why Indentured Workers is a good card early. Later on in the game, it's a little harder to get that, 5 MC for 1 victory point, so you're not quite as eager to play the card. And of course, if you have Media Group, though, it's now 8 cash for a victory point. Do that every day. Molehole Area is, I think, the best generic heat prod in the game, which is why I have it here. Tile placement does a lot, helping drive up the efficiency of the card. And Credit Core gets that nice rebate on the 20 mega credits, too. Love that Credit Core. And then we have just a bunch of events, and all these terraforming events are all good. They're all costed in a way such they're efficient to play. There's a lot of value on the Tharsis board of being able to throw down multiple oceans like Ice Asteroid or get some plants with imported hydrogen, and with the 2 plant oceans on the board, just be able to get an immediate conversion. Very strong, very good cards. Virus is here because being able to pay 4 to just make your planet lose 5 plants, that's brutal. And Gardener is usually a fight between strong players, and so being able to just say, no, you lose a greenery for just 4 mega credits, just absolutely soul crushing if it happens early. So Virus is a very strong card in 2-player format. Nuke Zone having a tile just makes it incredible, and already it's kind of just 2 income for just a little bit more than sponsors, right? But you get that tile placement, which is worth 4, and so this is basically exactly like sponsors, but it also moves the game along. So it's a card you love to see just about any strategy, but especially if you're playing a rush strategy, because it gets you that extra steps on the temp track to shorten the game. And Lake Marineris, this is one of those cards that, again, I think a lot of people underestimate. If you get to 0 degrees Celsius and there are still 2 oceans remaining, then this is 21 mega credits for 4 points. So you're already hitting that 5 MC threshold, roughly. But then you get the, cash back from the oceans being next to other oceans, most likely. So now we're talking, 4 cash rebate. So now it's 17 for 4 points. Like, that's really good. And then you get the resources on those oceans. Just, if you can play this card for its full value, it's absolutely insane. If you can't, it's still not bad, right? Only 1 ocean. That's still 3 points for 21. 7 for MC for victory points. Still not bad of a ratio. So, yeah, don't sleep on this card. Advanced Alloys, I think this might be the most overrated card in the deck. Yes, it is a good card. Yes, it is nice to have a science tag, but generally speaking, mineral-heavy strategies are not necessarily the best ones, and then, because they can be inconsistent, in that you have to draw the right tags to make use of them, because we've all had those games where you have 10 titanium sitting in your bank and you're going, what is this? Where are my space tags? And when that happens, it's just the worst feeling in the world, and Alloys doesn't help solve that problem. It makes it worse, in fact. And so, not a bad card. If you have card draw, it becomes much better. But it's just, I think, a little overrated. And Terraforming Ganymede, this is the only Jove up here. Just by itself, it's 3 points for 36. So, not the best value, but again, that's just by itself. And this is a card that's designed to be played with other Joves. If you have 2 other Joves, now all of a sudden it's 5 points for 36. Yeah, that's a pretty reasonable value. And each Jove you add after that can just make this card insane. So, because of its high value from that extra 2 victory points associated with it, I put it in the A tier for the Jovian Mults, but obviously you have to have support for this card to be good. And Noctis City is the best city in the game after Research Outpost, just because the spot is reserved for you, which means you can place greeneries around it as much as you want, and there's not a lot an opponent can do to block it. Sure, they could put some cities there, some commercial districts, but in general, just Noctis City is usually, hey, I'm going to get 3 or 4 points, and you can't do anything to stop me, and I'm going to get a bunch of the premium plant rebates from the board, and it's just really good. So now we're going to go into the B tier, and so what I want to say about some of these B tier cards is some of these cards are very strong and are in fact game-winning cards that if you play them early on in the game, but they can drop off really quickly later on, or be just like unplayably bad later on in the game, and so as a result, I'm just kind of going with their average value, and so yeah, you're going to see a bunch of production cards here. It's because they're average. They're just production cards. They're not going to have any game-winning effects like these up here. They're just good, solid cards. For the same reasons that Lake Marineris is good, and Ocean for 8 is also very good if it is playable. Flooding can be played at the very beginning. Yeah, it's no points for you, but just getting the premium rebates and getting the 2 cards or titanium or plants very strong for just 10 mega credits. And again, if it's kind of pushing the heat, then permafrost extraction is also pretty good. Asteroid is still a terraforming space event, so it's still good. Just in comparison to the rest of the space events, I don't think it's quite as good. Still good though, don't underestimate it. And Lunar Beam, I think a lot of you guys might be shocked to see Lunar Beam here because minus MC, ew, who wants that? Well, remember, this is Prelude, and Prelude speeds the game up and makes it a little more terraforming centric. And Lunar Beam is one of the highest win rate cards if played early because you're getting that immediate heat to help you have better game control. That power can be used to also get more heat with a card like GHG Factories right here. And just having a very potent, cheap way to get heat early on can do a lot for you, especially if you have cards like Earth Office or your Tractor to help discount it as well. So this card early is very good. This card, like past Gen 4, not so good. And so that's kind of the story of a lot of these heat cards in the B tier is that unless you find it in like the first 2 or 3 gens, not really that good. If you find it before that, though, very strong. If your strategy supports it. Obviously, if you have Earthcat, Research Outpost, and AGT in your opening hand, you don't really need to invest in the heat strat. I think you'll be just fine with whatever you do. Beam, for the same reason, it's basically a better Lunar Beam, but it's a lot more expensive, and most importantly, has that Jovian requirement. That is brutal. But it's a little more playable to get Jovians in Prelude than it is with base game. But yeah, if it wasn't for that Jovian requirement, this card would be very strong. As it is, if you can play it early on, it's very strong. If you can't, it's kind of bad. So I put it in B tier, but very situational in when it's good. And same thing with Soletta. Soletta is incredible if you play it on Gen 1. If you play it on Gen 4, it's not good. So, again, it's one of those cards where you're paying 38 mega credits. If we assume a heat is around 1 mega credit, like I said in my video, that basically means you need to produce like 40 heat for it to break even, which means you're looking at 6 gens of production. So you're really looking to get like 8 to 9 gens of production on Soletta where the heat is useful. So you really need to play it as soon as possible. And Prelude helps you play it sooner, which is one of the benefits of Prelude for this card. That's why it's much stronger here than it is in the base game. But if you're not playing it early, you're better off not playing it. GHG Factories is a little bit nice, and that's not quite as expensive in forcing. Similar to Molehole Area, just that power requirement can be a problem sometimes. Standard Tech, you guys have heard me talk about this before. This card can give you a lot of rebates. You have to do 3 standard projects for it to be worthwhile. And standard projects are inherently inefficient, but if you're just trying to standard project out a game and get your greeneries or your asteroids to end it, this card can go a long way towards helping you end it. And so be careful if you're passing this card. Now we have our just generic production cards. Obviously, if you get them early, they're good. If you get them late, they are bad. There's not really much to say about these cards. Card draw. Card draw is good, but that -1 can really hurt early on in the game. Just to look at cards, which might be bad. And so as a result, I'm not as high on this card because it's also missing the science tag, but it's still fine. Then it's 2-player that I'm mostly discussing, so cards like Sabotage and Hired Raiders hurt your opponent more than they hurt you. I do recommend being mindful of the fact that you are losing some money yourself when you play Sabotage. You're paying 4 mega credits to hurt your opponent by 7, 8, or 9. And so if you are poor and your opponent is rich, it's kind of a bad deal because you're limiting what you can play in that generation more than what your opponent can play. So don't just blindly take the card, but on average it's good. Large Convoy, great point dump at the end of the game. Not a bad card for trying to force out a Gardener or getting a development play in the mid game either. But most of the time, most people will wait on the animals, but don't neglect the 5 plants. Those can be very impactful in certain situations. And we talked about all the plant synergies, and here's a bunch of the plant cards. So again, generically, those plant tags can enable NRA. NRA is so strong that it is worth keeping these plant tags around just because of that value. Psychophiles is a nice card to help you pay for all the plant tags if you find it early. Archibacteria is just cheap enough that it's good enough to buy early on as well. It's discounted compared to other plant prod. And I'm sorry, by the way, for it being a little skewed and cut off on some of these cards. This is just one I found randomly online, and so I'm using it because I'm not going to copy and print out 208 plus of these cards. So thank you to whoever did it, but I do apologize for it being a little harder to read. Protected Valley is just a standard greenery that comes with the sponsors attached to it. Fine card, but nothing like crazy. It's the plant tag that really redeems the card the most. And being able to play it wherever an ocean is as opposed to being locked to where your current tile placements are. Heat Trappers, brutal card. A lot of people complain about Asteroid Mining Consortium. Yeah, Heat Trappers is more brutal than Asteroid Mining Consortium is, because it can be copied by Robo Workforce. And so your opponent plays them all and you play the Heat Trappers and Robo. That's almost GG on the spot. Absolutely crushing when it can be played. And I've noticed that people on BGA love playing hate cards, so don't need me to tell you that this card can be brutal in the right circumstances. And Biomass Combustors is similar to Heat Trappers, but not quite as bad. At least the 6% oxygen makes it come on quite a bit later. Next we have our cities here, Immigrant, Open, and Cupola. Cities are not that good, but they're okay. If you're going to play one, you'd prefer it to be one of these 3 if it's not going to be Noctis or Research Outpost. But don't jump up and down because you get the Immigrant City, right? You're paying 16 plus the power, so you're paying 23 mega credits to lower your production by 1 and place a city somewhere. So you better hope more cities come down, or you had some steel to play it, or you didn't need that power anyway, because that's a very expensive play to play this card. Open City is a great steel dump late in the game, that's why I have it here. If you have Steel Prod, Open City is one of the best late game dumps for that. And Cupola is okay early development. It's still not great. It's still 26 mega credits for 3 production, which is like, 13. So you're paying double what the development is, but the city tile can be valuable. But the city tile can also be sabotaged by stuff like Industrial Center. So playing it too early can be painful. And Industrial Center is here because it nerfs your opponent's cities and lets you get other rebates on other areas of the board. And that's very valuable in 2-player. Wild tag, a little overrated in some ways, but it can be a science tag, it can be a plant tag, it can help you play stuff like advanced ecosystems if you can't find one of the other relevant tags. It can be a Jovian tag when you're playing TG, and so it can also be builder tag for builder. It's a strong card. It's just niche. It's 7 for potential, and so that can be worth it, but I think it's slightly overrated. That's why it's in B tier. On average, it's fine though. And then we have a bunch of our science tags. Not really a whole lot to say about these. You're mainly playing them because they have science on them. Robo Workforce, though, gets a shout out for loving to copy the Molehole area or the Heat Trappers or the Med Lab and other fun copies. So this can be a very strong card even in later stages of the game. But yeah, science tags or science payoffs, which we've already discussed. GHG bacteria, it is a science tag. It is also a way for an oxygen strategy to raise heat, which is pretty good. If you can get 2 heat raises off with this, it's very efficient. If you can just get 1, not so good. You'd be better off with SP Asteroid probably. But I put it here just because it can be very useful occasionally. So if you have a lot of plants early on, I recommend considering this card when you see it. Fish, small animals, birds, they're just VP, hurt your opponent's plant prod. They're good cards, but they're not anything crazy either. I wouldn't go out of my way to first pick them. Imported nitrogen is a great point dump. I'm a little lower on this card than others because it can be hard to get value from every one of those things, but if you do, it's very strong with the Earth tag and the space event. It can be discounted and rebated, and so if you get several of those, then this card is an extremely strong card. But there's a bunch of synergy pieces that you have to pick up, which is why I put it in B as opposed to, I think a large convoy is a little bit easier because you just have to find one animal, or you can just take the plants. Doesn't require as many combo pieces, but still a great card. This is still maybe first pick worthy of a pack, but just on average, I found that I don't play it as much as I think I do. I have these great plans for it, and then I just never play it. But yeah, this is probably one of my more contentious ones. It may belong in A, but I put it in B after thinking about it a bit. We have our generic mineral prod, all fine. Electrocat is just development, fine. Space elevator, fine. IO Mining Industries, very similar to Soletta and Lunar Beam in that if you play it early, it is pretty good. 10 prod if you're Phobolog, 8 prod if you're anyone but Saturn, 9 prod if you're Saturn. All great. Comes with a victory point and more to come later. But that high cost means that if you play it like Gen 8, you basically are just shooting yourself in the foot. It's so expensive that you're not going to get any sort of rebate from it, and that makes it kind of impractical to play at a later time if you didn't find it early, which means really the most you can ever get is 3 Jovian multipliers. And so, yeah, this card is not good outside the early generations. Ganymede Colony is the best of the multipliers in that it's the easiest to play. It doesn't come with 2 points on it like TG does, which is why I have it here in the B tier. But being able to get a tile down can help with Landlord. The city can help with Mayor. Just in general, it's probably the best of the mults that's not TG. Asteroid Mining Consortium, overrated. I put it in B tier just because of the Jovian cards. It is still relatively efficient for what it does, but it's $16 to swing a titanium prod. Early on in the game, that can be worth it, and it can be painful if you have other titanium follow-ups. But like I said, if you've had those games where you're sitting on 10 titanium, you're going, why did I spend 16 mega credits, basically 1 generation, to do nothing with this titanium? This is awful. And so I'm not going to put it in C tier. I think it's still a decent card, but I think it is overrated by a lot of people. If it had a space tag, it would be so much better, but without that space tag, it can just be really painful. Vesta and Asteroid Mining, they are inefficient compared to Titanium Mine. Like, look at Vesta and Titanium Mine, you're paying 8 mega credits for that VP and the Jovian tag. So, overpaying by 3 mega credits on that Jovian tag and 3 mega credits early on the VP means it's an inefficient card, but it's still on average okay, and it combos with all the other Jovian multipliers that now presents a threat of the Jovian multipliers that I think it is a card that belongs in the B tier. You have to be mindful of the Jovians if you're passing them, but I don't think it is as good of a card as stuff like Titanium Mine and Mining Rights and Mining Area, but due to the threat of the whole package, I think it belongs in the B tier. Ability is take energy from your opponent and keep it for yourself. Good players will often play around this as much as possible by playing energy and then immediately using it. But if the energy is floating for a dev center, then by all means, energy tap away. Generic production on all this power, all of it's fine. Except Quantum here, that's a little bit of a weird one. Why is Quantum here? It's because 16 mega credits and the 4 science tag requirement for just the 4 power and the discount. It's just not quite as good. A little harder to play, a little more expensive. Uh, it's still a fine card if you meet the requirements early enough, but it's just not the almost always play that Mass Converter is. So that's why it's here. But yeah, power is good. If you can get it efficiently, then it's good to have. So now we're in the C tier, which I would describe as niche. Uh, these cards can be good, they can be bad. Also, they are much more likely to not pay off, and so I'm going to say that you should not automatically snub the cards, but you should definitely not be like, oh yeah, great card, I can't wait to play it. So again, we have our Heat Prod cards. Early on, I'm happy to play Black Polar Dust and Carbonate Processing, but later on, they're just kind of dead cards and not that good. And the 3 Heat also kind of hurts them. It's a little bit of an awkward number since Heat comes in 8 for its conversion, so you'd really rather have 4 Heat than 3. So just a little awkward and makes me not like them quite as much. Capital 2 Power Prod really is what hurts this card. And you're wanting to put it next to Oceans, which means that uh, it'll be hard to find a spot because usually those are being taken aggressively by good players in order to get the rebates. So the chance of you finding a nice empty 6 cash pocket for your capital while also having the 2 power prod and being willing to pay 29 mega credits, it's just hard to find a time to make it all work. But when it does work, like your mining guild and you have all this excess steel, then it's great. But yeah, just a little difficult. Dome Creator also super expensive for what's a kind of early-ish gameplay, but the 3 planets can really go a long way towards helping get a conversion. So it's not bad, just so expensive that it's not that common that you're going to want to play this card early. In urbanized area, most people play around it. If you can somehow find someone that's not playing around it, or if you can force it to be good, then it's great. But yeah, generally it's just played around too much to be worth it. Meteor Archives, the card's fine, just there's not going to be that many events in a 2-player game that's worth buying and holding on to it until the very end of the game to get a cash injection. That 3 mega credit holding fee can be really painful. But if you find it later in the game, and if a lot of events have been played, then it's great. It's like, thanks for the free investment loan, right? So just a matter of being aware of the game state as to how good this card is. But on average, I would put it in the C tier. It doesn't normally pay off. Doesn't normally have 12 events played that would make me want to buy it early. But if it's a crazy game where 20 events have been played, then sure, grab it. These power cards I think are all a little bit worse due to their requirements or their costs, but they're still fine in certain circumstances, such as a lot of steel or needing the power and the requirement already being met. Convoy from Europa, again, kind of an overrated card. It is essentially a standard Project Ocean, but you just get a card with it as well. If you have some synergies with the space or with the event, then that makes it much better. But just by itself, I think this is the number one card that people are like, I see a card in my hand I can play, I'm gonna play it. And it's like you literally just standarded an ocean, dude. That's not exactly a high impact play. Hope that card was really good for you. And these two cards are inefficient ways of getting heat. 6 mega credits for this imported advanced GHG and imported GHG. Again, if you have optimal arrow braking or discounts, then they're fantastic. But if you don't, they're not really that good. And speaking of discounts, you got shuttles and space station here for the space discounts. I think these cards are a little bit worse than the others because you want to play them early to take advantage of their discounts, but if you're playing them early, that is a large amount of money up front that you're spending for no immediate benefit. And so it can be difficult to find a situation where Space Station doesn't hamper your future plans and you have enough space tags in hand that it's worth playing. But if that situation works out, then great. It's fine to have a discount, and it can be really strong when comboed with stuff like Mass Converter and other space discounts. But just in general, I would say it doesn't work out as often as you think it would. In two-player, Pets is not that good. Most top players aren't going to play cities, therefore this card isn't very good. That being said, there will be games where no one can comfortably end the heat track because it's such a close game and you both have a lot of plant prod. Then you're standarding cities all over the board, and then Pets is absolutely insane, like an 8-point card. And so in those situations, Pets is like S tier. And then other situations, it's C tier. It's just awful. It's 1 point for 13. So yeah, this is a card that will change its value based on player count more than most because in a 5-player game, there's going to be a lot of cities and Pets will be pretty good, like a 4 or 5 point card. So in 2-player, which is what I'm discussing, I will put it in C tier. It's not bad, it's not good. Most games I will skip it, but some games it's insane, so you just gotta be mindful of it. Martian Survey, usually not that good of a card, because again, kind of an early requirement to spend 12 to look at 2 cards and get a victory point, but sometimes it's good, so you just be mindful of those times. Again, SF Memorial, expensive card draw. Colonizer, kind of it's not that bad of points. It's 11 for 2 points and a Jovian tag, which is a good discount, but just means you're kind of going a Jovian strategy and you're having to spend some early money on the points. If you can play this more in the mid game, its value goes up a lot more. But again, I'd say on average, I'd consider it kind of a card. And in the same way, ICS here, a lot of people see the 4 points and go ooh, but it's 27 cost, so that's not exactly a good deal, right? That's 6 mega credits for a victory point essentially. If you can get the discounts on this card and the rebates, then yeah, it becomes really good, but the 5 science requirement is a pretty high requirement for what is essentially already a mediocre VP deal, so yeah, not great. Same way, 4 point, if you have predators or birds or something, it's just okay. If you have physics complex and are using it, well then CEOs gets quite a bit better, but in general, a card I think people overrate. Maybe take it as like 3rd or 4th pick. Maybe you keep it in the mid game, but I probably wouldn't keep it early in the game. Preds, it's great if your opponent has animals and you're going to be able to use it multiple times. The 11% oxygen requirement, though, kind of makes it like 2 requirements at most games. Sometimes it's like 5, and in those games, it's like a game-winning card on the spot. But in the games where it's 1 activation, 15 for 2 points, not really the best ratio there. Livestock, usually you don't want to lose your own plant prod. The mega credits doesn't really matter at the 9% oxygen, and so I'd rather not pay more than the other animals to hit my own plant production. I'd rather play it and hit someone else's production. It still can be fine. It's still a 1 victory point animal, but just compared to the other ones, I think it's a little lackluster. If you have the steel prod, Eos is good for the same point reasons, but kind of expensive at 19 mega credits, and you have to have kind of a 1 point animal or at least eco zone for it to be good. And so uh, I think it's a little expensive for what you're often looking to do, but if the situation works out, it's a fine point dump. If you have excess heat, local heat trapping is good. If you don't, it's bad. It's as simple as that. Uh, can make you lose Thermalist as well on the Tharsis board, so gotta be careful with this card. Designed, if you get it early on, along with some heat, it's great. If you don't, it's bad. Science tag can be nice, but if you're paying 19 mega credits for a science tag, I'm sorry, that is too expensive. Do not play it just for the science tag. That should be a bonus, not a feature. Noctis farming, overrated. It has a plant tag, which is why it's decent at all, but just pretty expensive for what it gives you. And that temperature requirement can be a real problem towards getting it down early. Adapted Lichen, yeah, it's a plant tag. That's about all I can say about it. Building industries, commercial district, fuel factory, strip mine, radchem, all these have the same problems in mind, which is you're having to spend energy to get prod, and the prod is not particularly efficient prod because it is metals, and unless you find the targets for the metals, it's just not good. And so, not to say these cards are bad, I will happily play them early on if I have energy, and it's early in the game, but later on, the energy can be a real problem sometimes, and you have to find the targets, and just in general, these cards are more likely to not be good than they are to be good, which is why I have them here. If they didn't have the energy requirement, I'd be a lot higher on them, but the energy really does kind of sneak up on you on the, ooh, this is kind of frustrating uh, when you're playing the game. Radcam is the best of them. At 2 points is better than just generic production, but even so, 11 for 2 points is mediocre. If you're having to play an energy specifically for the Radchem, then it's 18 for 2 points, which is not good. And Lightning Harvest, while on paper it's fair value, it's very rare that once you finally reach that 3 science requirement, you're hankering to play energy and mega credit production card. You're looking more for stuff like AI Central and Mass Converter, so just kind of not there in the efficiency realm. Methane and water import from Europa, or WIFE as I call them. These are the Jovians that are, you keep thinking, gosh, it'll be good, and then you just never find the chance to play it, and you keep going, why can I not play this card? There's always something that's better to do than playing this piece of junk, and so it just kind of dies in your hand. So, again, if you're in Ventrix, then methane is pretty good. If you have smelting plant, methane is pretty good. If you have a bunch of titanium prod and Jovians, then WIFE is good. But again, those are kind of niche situations, and so this is the niche tier, which is why they're here. They're not to say they're not dangerous cards to pass. You should be aware of them, but just on average, I don't think they're particularly strong. We have our bumpers here as well. Bumpers are not often part of a winning strategy because it's difficult to get the 4 energy prod and not have it get tapped or have other uses that you want to use it. And then you're committing to raising the oxygen track, which can be a little dangerous as it's accelerating the game. If you're an engine player and your opponent has gone all in on plants, then playing one of these is great because you're taking his points. You're not contributing to the heat track. He doesn't have any progress on the heat track, and you're going to just outscale him, and it's great. But the times where that happens is just pretty rare in high level play, and so it's just rare that the oxygen bumpers are particularly good. But when they are good, they are good. But in general, I think they're a pretty niche strategy. Here we are in the D tier. These are all kind of bad cards. And not to say you won't find a use for these cards, but more often than not, these are not going to work out for you. So these power cards are all just too inefficient. Equatorial Magnetizer paying 14 for the privilege of turning what is essentially 7 mega credits into I think the game values a TR around like 9 mega credits, which is more than it should be because it's victory point and mega credits. And early on, the victory point's worth 2, so you're overpaying for the victory point. Later on, the victory point's worth more, but the cash is worth less, and so now you're overpaying for the cash, and it's just very awkward to pay 14 for the privilege of having awkward trades for energy to TR. The 2 ocean requirement and not getting any mineral from the water splitting plant makes it the worst of the oxygen bumpers, which is already a pretty niche strategy. Pretty rare you're going to have a bunch of power lying around. You're going to want to play the mag field cards. If you are a mining guild with infinite power, then yeah, have at it. They're great in that very specific situation. But for anyone else, best spend your steel on something else and not spend 4 energy on this card. So expensive. Likewise, Soil Factory. Spending energy is just a cost that most people just don't recognize how much it adds to the card. This card is 19 mega credits for 1 plant prod and 1 victory point. Holy cow. 19 mega credits for that? That's utter garbage. If you have the steel prod and the power prod that's just in excess, then fine, man, play it, but not a good card. Tundra Farming, you saw all the other plant cards, really high rated by me, and then I told you how good plant cards are, and then you come all the way down here and you're like, what? What's this card doing at the bottom? This card just doesn't do enough. It is giving you points and mega credits and no plants. Where's my plants? And at the -6C, like, dude, you're right next to trees. I'd much rather have 3 plant prod than 1 plant prod and 2 mega credits at the end of the game, essentially. Like, what utter garbage. This card just doesn't have any real usage. For some reason, people seem to like it. When I see games on Board Game Arena, I keep going, why? It's so bad. Everything about this card is just bad. I hate it on principle. It's probably one of my least favorite cards in the game. It's not useless. It does have, the bio synergies in VP, so it belongs in D tier, but it's so bad. Cloud Seeding would be good if it had a plant tag, but it doesn't, so it sucks. Losing your mega credits also is painful, and requiring your opponent to have heat prod can be kind of hit or miss, and so just the card's not too good. Rare that microbe tags are useful outside of like insects and viral enhancers and decomposers, and so it's very rare you will have even 2 prod from this card. If you get 2 prod, it's fine. If you get 3 prod, it's pretty dang good. But it's just very rare, considering that other microbe cards aren't that good here, that it will work out for you. Simbi is fine if it is opportunistically coming up for like a GHG bacteria or decomposers. Same with extreme cold fungus. Even regolith eaters is great with extreme cold fungus, but just very expensive combo at like 26 plus 6, 32 mega credits early on in the game. Yeah, it's expensive. So the number of times that works out, almost none. If it does work out, it's pretty good. But because it's so unlikely to work out and so expensive, it belongs here in D tier. But this is probably the most dangerous of the D tier cards. AAA, a lot of people will give me grief on this one because they like this card. I don't like this card. It's almost impossible to get the microbe value. The 3 heat is awkward, and the 1 plant doesn't really do a lot by itself. Now, if you can combo it with other cards, so like BPD alongside the AAA, then that's better. And if you can get the psychophiles for the microbes to go on, or I'm not saying you can't play the card, but just 29 mega credits early on while having to play other cards to help supplement it, it's rare I'm happy about playing this. But this is probably the most contentious of my picks. I think a lot of other top players would probably put this card in C tier, but I don't like it very much. I put it in D tier. Rover Construction, against not that many cities being played, you're kind of looking for 3 or 4 cities to be played after this card is played. So in certain scenarios, it's great. Most of them, not so good. Breeding filters kind of in inefficient VP for the requirements, but it's okay. Physics complex, same thing. It's mainly a science tag, and for just a science tag at 15, kind of expensive. But if the circumstances align right, that it turns on like mass converter, it can be pretty good. Artificial Lake is a SP Ocean with a victory point with it. Card gets a lot better on the Elysium map, but we're kind of just talking about the base Tharsis map, so not quite as good. Kind of rare. You're going to want to pay 18 for an Ocean and 1 VP. At the stage of the game where it's playable, it's pretty close to the Ocean bonus, so once you start getting around -6, it's very likely that the bonus Ocean is going to go, and then if that's the last Ocean, then this card's kind of useless. If you have tons of steel, it can be completely fine, but just in general, it's not amazing value for the difficulty you can have in playing it sometimes. Adaptation tech and special design. These cards can be very good, turning on like kelp farming early on. Can combo with Inventrix and have some funny games, but in general, 15 mega credits is just too expensive early on for the effect, and so just not that good. And Land Claim, very annoying to play on your opponent sometimes, but 4 mega credits to reserve a spot, it's kind of just the worst industrial center since you're not getting the placement bonus. Caretaker Contract, very rare that he is maxed out so early that you're looking forward to paying 6 mega credits to get a TR from it. If it does happen that he is maxes out very early and Thermalist is completely safe and you find this card, then sure, man, great. But the times that those circumstances occur, very low, therefore D tier. -2 VPs, too much for Corporate Stronghold. Aquifer Pumping. While I do like the card in some formats, Prelude is too fast with the Oceans. It's rare you get enough value from Aquifer Pumping to justify the high initial cost. Not that many cities, so not very good. Not that much power hanging out. Stealing Steel Prod with no steel paying towards it. Just pure money can be a little bit annoying. House Printing, you're overpaying for the VP. Same for Phobos Space Haven. Lava Tube doesn't necessarily have the best placements. 2 power is kind of really bad for Underground City. Inefficient TR. Can be useful for cheap oxygen rays, but even then it's 15. For 8 more, you can get an extra point from a standard project greenery. So just kind of hard to justify a lot of scenarios for mining expedition. Rad Suits is basically a TR. It's a mega credit and a VP, but it comes with the requirement of 2 cities, so not very good. Terrible value Jovian. Only playable if you're going Jovian strat, just kind of garbage. If there's a lot of cities, this card can be okay, but there's normally not, and then you're overpaying for the mega credit production. It's rare that you're going to have that many space events early on, so Satellites isn't that good. Not much cities. Insulation can be a very serious card to consider with Banker, but it's just rare that you finish the game quickly enough that you have a lot of extra heat burning a hole in your pocket that you're going to want to change them over to mega credits and them actually do something for you. But it's very dangerous as a Banker threat, so that's why it has its spot here. Chop Resort, just a bad victory point value. Toll Station, kind of useless for the same reason Satellites can be kind of useless, though occasionally it can pop off. And Martian Rails probably belongs in F tier because not a lot of cities, but I have a soft spot for this card, so I put it in D tier because it's my tier list. And then finally, the F tier. Dust Seals embodies everything you don't want to do, which is paying victory points early instead of building your engine. If you find the card later on, it's fine. You have a lot of discounts, it's fine, but in general, not a good card. Hackers, terrible card, too expensive. The hit in the MC is not enough of a swing. You're kind of killing your own development to hope that you kill your opponent's development. And if they have better development than you, then well, you're kind of in bad shape. Micrometals doesn't do enough. It's too expensive. Underground Debts is far too expensive, and it's probably, as most people know, the worst card in the game. Security Fleet, you're paying 15 mega credits for the privilege of spending 3 mega credits on 1 victory point. You need to do this early on to have it pay off that ratio. absolute garbage. Kills your engine completely. Only time it's good is when you have significant space discounts or infinite titanium later on in the game. Regular theaters is just far too expensive. Science tag is its only real redeeming quality, and even then too expensive. Only really viable with extreme cold fungus, I would say. And Food Factory is just utter garbage. 15 mega credits to essentially lose your more valuable plant prod for your mega credit production, and 1 VP, just garbage. So from here, you probably have seen some common trends with my quantified guide video. You've seen a lot of trends on science and plants good, other things more situational. Um, as I've said before, every card will have its day. I have had games I have won because of Security Fleet. I have had unstoppable combos because of regular theaters. I have played Food Factory for the milestone builder. So I'm not saying that these cards are unusable trash every time, but this is an on average list, and on average, you want to play these cards. You're happy playing these cards. You don't want to play these cards. So I hope that helps you when it comes to your cards. This kind of invalidates a lot of that quantified guide I put out, because now instead of having to evaluate the cards yourself, you can just look at this and say, I see Thread said this is good, so this is what I will pick. But I think that this is still a useful guide to have for a lot of new players. So with that, now we're going to go look at our Prelude tier list. And so for our Preludes here, for those of you that don't know, Preludes are, you're given 2 of them, or 4 of them, and you get to pick 2 of them. And they're very powerful additions to your game that's going to speed up your initial development. A Prelude is worth 21 mega credits on average. You can check this in many different ways, but let's use my quantified guide here and look at all the ways you can reach 21. So blackjack. We're going to be saying blackjack a lot here. So donation, blackjack, 21 right there. Loan, minus 2 mega credits. That is minus 9 mega credits. You get 30. So 21. Allied banks. We have 9 plus 9. That is 18 plus 3, 21. Blackjack. Dome farming. Remember I talked about how the developers have a plant prod that is worth 12 at the very beginning of the game. So 12 plus 9, 21. Blackjack. 3 power, 7 plus 7 plus 7, 21. Blackjack. So you can see all the different ways that these all add up to 21. And so that's the value of a prelude. So a lot of the value of these preludes is how well do you spend this 21 money. And so, sorry about my dogs. They decided now is the perfect time here late at night to go walk around the house. Anyway, Unimi Contractor, I think is one of the best preludes in the game. You get 3 mega credit production and 3 victory points and a card and an earth tag. Just a lot of value early on for a prelude. Great Aquifer on the Tharsis map is very strong because you can basically open up with I get 2 cards, 2 titanium, 2 MC prod, and 2 victory points. Very strong. Or you can get 4 plants and 2 points and 2 mega credits back from the ocean bonuses, and then if you have enough for a greenery conversion, convert next to them to get 4 mega credits back. Very good. And Great Aquifer Experimental Force, the nasty combo, because you can do just that. If you're Eco Line, Great Aquifer for 4 plants back. Experimental Force on that 4 cashback spot. Now you have enough plants to convert with Eco Line to get 2 greeneries Gen 1. Absolutely brutal. And Experimental Force is really good because Gardener is a milestone. This gives you progress on that. And the plant tags are very good for helping you maybe grab Ecozone. Or Arctic Algae, or Kelp Farming, or some of those other top tier cards. If you high roll with this card, it can be very hard for your opponent to come back. And again, the placement bonus is nice too, especially if you get it with Great Aquifer. Supply drop. Add up the cost on these minerals, and we got 16 plus 9, that's 25. And if you count the plants as 2, then that's 6, so that's 31 mega credits of value. This is plus 10 value because the minerals can be a little harder to spend. So if you have a way of spending those minerals, then supply drop is much stronger than average in terms of the money that it gives you. Same thing with Metal Rich Asteroid. We have 8 and 12, so that's 20. So already that is the value of a Prelude, and you get the Asteroid Race, so again, above average value. In Huge Asteroid, this one is going to be a little divisive, but this is the best Prelude to rush a game out, because you are instantly taking up 3 heat track raises here, and getting 1 heat prod as a result of it. Yes, you are paying 5 mega credits for the privilege of that, but the card facilitates a rush strategy better than basically any other Prelude here, and so as a result, it is very strong. And now here's where the pitchforks are coming out. In the A tier, I have Allied Banks, and I know all of you are going, Thread, what the heck? I like Allied Banks too. Don't get me wrong. I really do like Allied Banks, but it is a fairly costed Prelude at 21 mega credits. It does not have you accelerate your early game like the other cards do, and it doesn't give you something that your hand doesn't already have like the other ones do. This card, you have to have cards in your hand that you're planning on playing to get the full value from the Prelude. And while it is a great Prelude, and I do like it a lot, if your hand sucks, then, well, its cards doesn't do anything to fix your hand sucking like the rest of them can, or it doesn't provide the absurd extra value like the other ones do. So as a result, I put it in A tier. I know I'm going to get a lot of disagreement on it, but that's my honest feeling. Acquired Space Agency can be really good. 18 and not just 2 random cards, but 2 random space cards. If they're space events, it's great. Phobolog loves it when it pulls IO Mining Industries with this card. But you can also get, AAA and Space Mirrors, and then you're crying. It's not a total loss, because if you have another space card in hand, it's still 18 mega credits of value instead of the full 21. You could sell the 2, so it's 20 mega credits in the worst case. So it's still not a bad Prelude, but it is more likely to whiff than Experimental Forest is. Orbital Construction, nothing to say. It's generic production. I rate the Titanium a little higher than I do the other cards, because Terraforming is kind of the more enabled strategy in Prelude, and space events therefore are usually stronger than other development cards, and so having the weight of playing the space events is better than playing building cards, which is why I have Orbital a little bit higher, but it's not that much better. Dome Farming is mainly because of the plant tag. It's fine production, can be copied with Robo Workforce, which is quite good. Aquifer Turbines, again, Oceans are valuable for going for the 2 cards or 2 Titanium. Power is nice. -3 is a little sad, but it's fair. Business Empire, I think, is worse than Allied Banks. I debated putting this in B tier, but that kind of made the tier list get a little cramped, so I stuck it in A tier. Yeah, it doesn't help your production. This is an engine card. I am playing a long game engine when I play the card Business Empire, and or I have really bad Preludes. So it's fine. It's still fairly costed. Just compared to Allied Banks, this card slows down your initial development, and so yeah, I mean, I'd probably put it B tier, honestly, if it didn't kind of mess up the margins when I was making this list. But yeah, probably belongs in B tier, but it's still fine. Just not that good to hamper your early development with Preludes. Metals Company gives you no immediate benefit in Gen 1. Gives you minerals, which can be kind of hard to spend, which not the best. It opens you up to being consortiumed and by both Great Escarpment and Asteroid Mining, and that's really painful when you lose a lot of your Prelude's value. Has no tag associated with it, so that means it's just fine, but it's not as good as people make it out to be. Mining Ops, for the reasons I mentioned. Building tags are okay, but they're not quite as good as space tags. Power from Supplier is nice. Usually a nice combo is Supplier and Strip Mine to get yourself some extra production. Can also be nice for stuff like just enabling Dev Center or playing other development cards. Three power prod, kind of overkill in some situations, but it's not necessarily bad to have the power go over the heat. So power generation is fine. A lot better in colonies when this enables you to trade with the colony, Gen 2. But this is based in Prelude, so we're just talking about its current format, and here it's just fine. Polar Industries, again, some heat control is nice. The ocean for the cards or titanium or plants, it's fine. Not great, but not bad. Mohole is very similar to Polar Industries. You're looking for some heat. You want to rush out the game. Mohole is a good opportunity to do so, but I just want to point out point out huge asteroid. This is 3 temperature raises. That is the equivalent of 24 heat. That means that you instantly get from huge asteroid what it's going to take you 8 generations for Mohole to accomplish for you. Yes, Mohole can be copied. Yes, Mohole counts towards a milestone on Tharsis. Yes, it doesn't take -5 from you, but just the disparity between these preludes is kind of large, in my opinion. I think huge asteroid is just always better than Mohole. Research Network, you really need the wild tag, or you have a really terrible hand, because if this thing whiffs, you just spent 21 mega credits on 1 mega credit production. Wah, wah, wah. You are hurting if this whiffs, or if you don't need the wild tag for something critical. Self-sufficient settlement. If you're Tharsis, I like this better than Allied Banks. If you're anyone else, not so good. Early cities don't really help that much, and usually just results in your cities getting hated on. Biosphere, the -1 production. I understand why they did it. Again, balance around 21 mega credits, so 12 plus 12 is 24. 24 is too much. We should find a way to get it closer to 21. I know, we'll subtract -4.5. That gets us to 19.5 mega credits. That's close enough to 21. Good enough. Let's call it a day. Go home. Yeah, the -1 hurts it a bit, but the plant tag still has value. 2 plant prods still fine. Just it's below average value for a prelude. IO Research Outpost. So my quantified guide, remember, this is worth 10, this is worth 4, so that's 14. Where's the other 7 mega credits of value coming from? I see a science tag that explains one of them, so we're at 6 mega credits of value, and it's just the Jovian tag. I am paying 6 mega credits for a Jovian tag. Ugh. So yeah, obviously not very good. It can be okay if you're Saturn. It can be okay if you need to play that beam from a thorium asteroid. It can be okay if you need that science tag for that AI Central or mass converter, but otherwise I would avoid. Smelting plant, not quite as good as the other ones, but the 5 steel can still be useful. Turns on that methane from Titan, as I mentioned, which can be kind of fun. Biolab, 3 random cards and a science tag. Kind of just like a research network, but a little less flexible in the tag, but a little bit better of production. Not very big fan of the risk it all on 3 cards. That's kind of what Inventrix does, and Inventrix is, spoilers, not that good of a corporation. Hey, there's our 21 cash. Yay! So that's our baseline prelude. If you have big cards in hand you want to play, then it's fine, but it has the same problem as Allied Banks of if your hand isn't good, then this card isn't good. But at least Allied Banks, you've invested it into MC production. Here you just have it as money. What are you going to do with that? You got no way to invest it, which makes it far worse than Allied Banks. So let's do another quick check on values of, how close we can get to 21. 6 plus 6 is 12. Plus 7 is 19. Plus 2 heat, 21. Blackjack. So yeah, by now I hope you see the pattern. Mohole excavation, worse than Mohole. You're kind of splitting your steel and your heat. Generally, if you're playing a heat prelude, it's because you're wanting to go with a more rush strategy, and I don't like splitting the heat. I'd rather go more all in on the heat, but it's fine. Not a bad copy to Robo Workforce. Biofuels, you gotta have a use for the power early. Plants can be good if you're like Ecoline or something, but otherwise they're likely to just kind of get blown up. So it's fine, but not good. I think early plant's a little worse than 2 money because, again, likely to be blown up. Galleon Mining, boy, you thought IO Research Outpost was a stinker of a deal. You don't even get the science tag on this one. You get 20 mega credits, -5. We're at 15 value, so that means, again, 6 mega credits of value for that Jovian tag. Ugh, gosh, what a stinker. But somehow, Society Support is even worse. I don't know what they were thinking when they made this card. Well, I do know what they were thinking. I don't understand why playtesting didn't reveal that, wow, guys, this is a mistake. So what they were thinking is, let's do our quantified guide together, everyone. 12 plus 7 plus 6 equals 25. Uh-oh, 25 mega credits too much. Let's get it closer to 21, minus 1 mega credit, minus 4.5. Ah, there we go. 20.5, a balanced card. But no tag. 1 plant prod doesn't do much on its own. 1 energy doesn't do much on its own. 1 heat doesn't do much on its own. And you're now losing some money each generation. Just, ugh. Ugh. Terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. This is one of the ones you almost always want to avoid, though it is very fun when it does work out. The Society Support AAA combo there, 2 plant prod, 4 heat prod, actually not that terrible, despite them being 2 of like some of the most disliked cards I have. Sometimes you can make it work, and it's funny when it does, but in general, avoid this card. Same with Society Support, Nitrogen Shipment. Yeah, 1 TR, not doing it that much. 1 plant prod, likely to get blown up early. 5 cash is nice, but just not enough. There's no tag. It's not enough economic development. Martian Industries, 7 plus 7 is 14, plus 6 is 20. 20? Where's my 1? You're stiffing me. So, yeah, I don't know why they didn't make this 7. It'd at least help make the card at least fair compared to the rest of these, but this is just undervalued. I don't know why they chose to do that, but I really don't like this Prelude. And then loan, all the problems of donation, you better really have something you need the extra 9 credits to do because you're paying -2 for the rest of the game for it. Brutal. So, yeah, I don't like loan very much. It's very rare you have a very expensive hand where you need to get it all out immediately. And then we have 2 here in the situational tier. If you have a kelp farming or farming with ecology experts, it can be pretty good. Otherwise, there's legendary play birds from your hand and hope that your opponent is eco-line to instantly ruin their day and kind of waste a prelude of your own, but you ruin eco-line's day, and it's kind of a moral victory in and of itself. I would not recommend doing that, but it is funny when it happens. Eccentric Sponsor, if you have a card that is worth more than 25 that you want to play early, then hey, it's better than 4 for the Prelude average value. But just kind of rare you have a card for more than 25 that you want to play in your hand at the same time you're dealt Eccentric Sponsor. So very situational, but when it works out, it works out. So I hope this helps you with the Prelude evaluations. Obviously, each one will change based on the hand, but in general, these are the happiness levels I have when I see the preludes in my starting hand before I look at my cards. And so finally, we're going to look at the corporation tier list. So, no surprise, Credicore is the best corp in the game, and it continues to be the best corp in the game in Preludes. The ability to standard projects efficiently is just ridiculous. The fact that space events are all very likely to be over 20, and as we saw before, look at more than 20, more than 20, more than 20, more than 20, more than 20. A lot of the best cards are all more than 20, which means it gets a discount on all of those. So yeah, Credicore is absurd. Ecoline, I think a lot of people might be like, wow, Ecoline, really? S tier? Yeah, that early plant prod is no joke when it comes to being able to claim Gardener. And Preludes speed up its development so much and allow it to be absolutely cutthroat when it comes to raising heat and playing the oceans. This corporation goes hard when it gets the right setup with heat and oceans, and it's just kind of unstoppable unless you have an absurd engine of your own. So Ecoline probably gets, I think, the second biggest boost in Preludes compared to any of the other corporations. Third place, I have Vitor. I am not sure Vitor deserves to be S tier alongside the rest of them, because Vitor is very dependent on having to find victory points in order to use its ability. And the initial funding of an award can be useful. It can also really come back to bite you as your opponent beats you in it, because you don't really know what their hand is, and yeah, that hurts when you're a Vitor. But I think on average, they are strong enough that they deserve to be S tier. And I know what you're all thinking of. What? Where's Point Luna? Well, Point Luna's not S tier in my opinion. I think it's A tier. I think Point Luna, just like AI Central, everyone has that game, right? You all have that game where you're playing against your opponent who's Point Luna, and then they have just one card in their hand, and you're like, easy game. And then they play the Earth Office into the Earth Cat, into the sponsors, into the acquired company, into the investment loan, and you're like, what on earth is going on? To the cartel, into the Miranda Resort, and then they have 30 prod, and you're like, what is this stupid corporation? Who approved this thing? So yeah, obviously it can pop off and be absolutely insane, but I've also had the Point Luna games where I played my Point Luna and I played my allied banks with it, and I never saw an Earth tag for the rest of the game. And yeah, that hurts. That corporation doesn't exactly have a lot going for it. 48 mega credits of value when you only find one Earth tag to go with it for the rest of the game. So on average, it is a good corp. I'm not trying to say it is a bad corp. It is good, but the number of people that overrate the corporation, I think, is very high, and it's very swingy based on what it draws on, and it has to find the Earth tags as well, and so you remember the highs, you don't remember the lows, and the lows can be very low with Point Luna. Icy, this is the potential strongest corporation in the game. I complained about Credit Core, and I told you how terrifying Ecoline can be, but play an IC with alloys and media group and optimal arrow braking, and you're dead. Just go ahead and hit the concede button now. There's no point in playing this thing out. With alloys, that is 90 mega credits of starting value and a built-in pseudo media group, which if they get an actual media group, then there's suddenly 5 mega credits back from each event. Just like, oh, this sucks. This sucks. Not fun to play against. So as a result, very strong burst corp if they have the building tags early. If they don't, they're not that scary. Very low starting cash. They have to have a use of their steel. But if they do, it can be pretty strong. Tractor, just a lot of cash. Lets them do just about anything they want. Not much more to say about that. Chungxing, -2 to all building tags, is very strong for initial development. 3 MC prod, also strong, and they have 44 cash on top of that. Just a very strong corporation. You can even copy it with Robo Workforce and just have a guaranteed +3 mega credits from the card. So, it's good. You can never have a bad game with Chungxing. It's kind of my opinion on them. Valley Trust, we talked about how Preludes are worth 21 mega credits on average. Valley Trust gets an extra Prelude, means that basically they're starting with 58 mega credits of value and a -2 to science tag effect. Very good. Being able to look at 3 Preludes means that on average it will be a good Prelude. Yes, you can get some stinkers, but generally speaking, it will be good and it will help further your game. Helion, absolute worst case, it's 3 EMC production, but having some heat production can be very good for enabling a rush strat in Prelude, and so I think Helion enjoys Prelude more than some of the other corps does, and it's a respectable mid-tier corporation for me. Thorsis, it's just a middle-of-the-road corporation in 2-player. Nothing really much to say about it. Saturn, I think Preludes kind of hurt Saturn because the only Preludes with Jovian tags are stinkers. So and the game kind of sped up, so it can be kind of hard for Saturn to have the time to find its Jovians. It's still a fine corp because it still is 1 mega credit production and 1 titanium production. But if you're playing it just for the Jovians, it's not really gonna be that great for you. Robinson is the weakest of the Prelude corps. I put it at the bottom of B tier. 4 mega credit for production is great when it's on plant production, titanium production, and to a lesser extent steel and energy. It's kind of terrible when it's on 1 heat production and 1 mega credit production. So you really want to avoid those. So if you're playing Robinson, you need to find ways to get your heat and your mega credit production up. And if you can't find that, then you kind of stop having a corporation ability after 3 generations. So it can be good. In general, I'd say it's not often that good though. Mining Guild, you're all in on steel and tiles, and if you do not find steel targets and tiles, then you die. And that is about all I can say about Mining Guild. It is kind of an all-in corp. Now, I think that it's probably the corp I lose to weaker players with more than any other corp, because weaker players, if they find the tiles and the building tags, then they will overwhelm me with their production and have an easy miner fund and win the game. But yeah, and just in general, I'm not a huge fan of it because of how all-in it is, but it can be good. Definitely very hand dependent more than the rest of the other corporations we've talked about so far. Inventrix, draw 3 cards. The ability is usually not a thing. Like methane from Titan and algae and kelp farming, those are about the only times it really seems to matter. 45 mega credits is a little, always makes you feel poor because you don't really have any extra ability coming from it. Science tag is probably the most notable thing about it. You know, in the Hodgepodge Discord, we just meme about how poor Inventrix, because you're just always feeling like you're in the poorhouse the whole game. And that's kind of their biggest problem. Yeah, they don't really have much of a corp ability, and they don't have a lot in terms of income or in production. So you're very dependent on those 3 cards that you draw, and just in general, they're not one of my favorite corps to play. Definitely C tier. Unimi got the biggest buff of all the corporations as a result of Prelude, because the Preludes count for your Gen 1 terraforming, which means you can play one of those Preludes and get your terraforming, and you don't have to play an expensive terraforming event. You just hit the button, boom, there's your 3 mega credits for a point in the MC prod. And then your Preludes can help set up your terraforming, like we talked about the mole hole and other things like that. And then the next generation, boom, you hit the button because you're Preludes. And now you can actually use your 40 cash, that very minuscule amount of cash you get, to actually develop something and keep hitting the button every generation, and it just makes it a whole lot better. So UNMI got the biggest glow up from Preludes. It's still not a good corporation. You still have to work a whole lot harder, and it's much more hand dependent than all the other corporations I talked about. But with the right hand, it can be an absolute monster. It's just kind of rare that you get that right hand with them. But definitely the biggest improvement so far. This would be the worst corporation if it was just a base game. Oh, Phobolog. ASA helps them out a little bit, but the fact you can still only keep 7 cards from your opening hand is just sigh. Very painful. Why it can't be like IC and have 30 cash and like 8 titanium? I don't know. I don't know why they thought that was a good idea. If you get the IO Mining Industries, I guess that's great, but like you think at Phobolog and you think, oh, I want titanium prod. I'm gonna take Galilean mining, and that -5 mega credits. I hope you like only being able to keep 6 cards now. Like, oh, it's pain, suffering. Just poor Phobolog, man. You need to have lots of titanium production and lots of good space cards in your hand for it to be playable. Definitely one of the roughest corporations, but the roughest by far is Thorgate. Thorgate, what are you doing, man? You have a very mediocre to terrible ability. 1 power prod was nice in the base game because you could use it on some developing moves, but with the preludes, like I'm just gonna rather do supplier or power generator or aquifer turbines or even Martian industries. Like, why am I bothering with you? What are you doing for me? Power is more plentiful in preludes, and your ability doesn't interact with the preludes, so you're just kind of terrible in every sense of the word. Least favorite corp to play by far. I'd rather play Phobolog than Thorgate if I have the option and the hand supports it. So, anyway, with that, that is my comprehensive corporations, preludes, and cards tier list. I hope this was useful to you, and I'm sure there will be lots of hate and discontent in the comments, but that's fine. Let me know what you agree or disagree with, and then play some games, and we'll see how your opinions work out, and maybe I'll have to publish some retractions if the results speak differently. But let me know if there's anything else that you want me to talk about, and I'll see you guys later.